when the pain of staying becomes worse, and sometimes it has to be way worse, then the uncertainty of moving on, the uncertainty of leaving, it becomes easier to move on with your life. What do I mean by that? Well, some of us, and this might seem very insensitive to say, but it's facts. Some of us don't understand how much freedom comes with letting go of what we're used to. Some of us really aren't sick and tired of really being sick and tired. You might say, Trent, I am sick and tired. Well, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then you're not going to accept less anymore with your life. Right? And sometimes it takes really getting to a place of understanding that this pain is so tough. It is so hard. I'm willing to go through uncertainty, because most of us will stay in a place of certainty. And listen to me right now. We'll stay in a place of certainty no matter what that certainty looks like, no matter if it's pain, no matter if it's pleasure, as long as, and this seems crazy to say, but our minds are crazy things. But as long as it's a place of certainty and we're comfortable in certainty, we'll stay there, even if it's pain, because at least we know what we're going to get out of it. At least we can maybe even have a plan. Okay, when I go through this, I can do this. And some of us, our plans are bad habits. Some of us, we go through pain and we turn to drugs, we turn to drinking, we turn to things we shouldn't turn to because we're dealing with this pain. So some of us would rather stay in certainty and comfort than move on to the uncertain things in our life. And why is that? None of us like uncertainty. None of us like surprises. Let's be real. You might say, oh, I like to be surprised. No, you like the surprises that you want in your life. None of us like uncertainty. None of us like moving on into the unknown. And so if we're leaving something, automatically that means that for most of us, we're moving on to the unknown, right? We're letting go of something that's been a big part of our life, and we don't know what our life is going to be without it. My thing was football. You guys know that. Like, me and football was together. We were like dating. Like, that was my everything. That was my love. That was my heart. And I know that might seem like kind of like strange, like, Trent, that is kind of, but for my athletes out there, or for somebody who has a strong connection to something they love and do, you understand it. And so that's why I was so afraid to let go of sports, because there was so much uncertainty. Even though I knew I didn't love it anymore, I stayed in it. Why? Because at least it was certainty. At least it was somewhat comfortable, even in the uncomfortableness of it. I know that sounds weird, but I'm pretty sure you guys can relate to it. So I would rather stay in that, even though I didn't love it, even though I didn't want to do it anymore, even though I knew I needed to move on from it. Because guess what? The pain of staying was hard. It was worse. I knew it was over for me. I knew it was over. I knew there was nothing gonna happen. I knew I was gonna make it to the NFL. I even settled for arena football. And arena football sucks. And sorry if there's any arena football. Well, it's done now. But arena football sucks. It's terrible. And so I even settled for even less, because at least I would have that title to my life. At least I would have that somewhat significance to my life. Even if it wasn't the level of significance that I once had, as long as I have a little bit of it. And how many of us right now watching this can relate? Can you relate to that? Some of us, we would rather a little bit of something, right? We can have 90% of pain, 90% of headaches, 90% of stress. And some of us will stay in that. Even if it's 2%, a little bit, 1%, less than 1% of pleasure, of a little bit of happiness, a little bit of joy. We would rather stay in that little than accept nothing. So for those in a relationship that's bad, you would rather stay in a relationship that's bad, as long as they give you that 1%, than move away from the relationship, release the relationship, and have nothing from that person. Now, this is where you have to start thinking about your future. How is that going to help your future? What is your future going to be filled with if you choose to stay in something that's toxic for your life? If you choose to stay in something that's bringing you tears every single night? If you choose to stay in something that's destructing, destroying? Now, use those words because it's true. Your life. So for me, it had to come to a place of, hey, I don't care about the uncertainty. I don't care about being uncomfortable. I would rather go down this path that I don't know where it's going to lead than staying on a path that I know is going to lead me to something that I don't want for my life. I would rather go to the path that I don't know where it's going. It could take me to something worse. It could take me to something better. I don't care, but I know where I'm not staying. And when you get to a place of knowing where you're not staying, then you'll find a way to move on. But you can't let the unknown, the uncertainty, being uncomfortable, keep you in a place that you know is not going to better your life. And as I move through this, listen, I'm already probably 10 minutes in, and I ain't even thought about the stuff I was about to talk about. It's one of those trainings today. It's really going to break through for you. This is going to be one of the trainings that you come back to and say, this is the training that really changed my life. This is the training that really helped me move the needle in my life, really helped me break free from the things that I know are breaking me. But I want you to focus on 3 things. And as I talk, think about these 3 things. It's 3 A's. And I did a podcast recently and I actually messed up one of the A's, but it's kind of the same word. But the first A, when it comes to moving on, you got to have awareness. What do I mean by awareness? And I'll dive into this a little bit more. But you got to have awareness, self-awareness. You got to have awareness of your standards, your values, what you aren't willing to negotiate, what boundaries aren't you willing to budge. Because when you have self-awareness and you realize, okay, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm dealing with, this is where I'm being hurt at, this is where I'm selling for less at, the more you have self-awareness that you're in a situation that sucks, and you're not smoke screening it. You're not trying to pretend like it's perfect for social media because you're so afraid of what people are going to say, or you're so afraid that if I leave this job, I'm not going to have a job and people are going to ask me all these questions, right? You got to be self-aware to know that if I stay in here, I'm not going to ever be freed from this pain. You got to know exactly the reality of the situation, because some of us, we try to fake it till we make it in the situation. Maybe it's because we're so wrapped up into what it first gave us. And that's why breaking free, and I'm probably gonna talk about this later, but breaking free is so hard from certain situations. You gotta look at it as like an addiction, right? A drug addict, addiction with food, addiction with alcohol, whatever it may be, alcohol, addiction with video games. It's so hard to break free from certain things that you know you need to break free from, because our mind subconsciously is tied to what it once gave us. And what it once gave us was something beautiful. What it once gave us was pleasure. What it once gave us was relief. That's why we're associated to that. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's why it's hard for us to break free from that, because we're not aware of the truth of the situation. We're not aware of what it is instead of what it was. What they once gave us, or what it once gave me, it's no longer giving me that today. And so when you become aware of the reality of the truth, of the facts of the situation, it makes it a little bit easier. I'm not going to say easy, but it makes it a little bit easier to move forward with your life. The second A that I want you to think about during this whole training is acceptance. And this one's hard, because some of us, we don't want to accept that time in our life is over. I didn't want to accept football was over. I didn't want to accept certain past relationships, friendships were over, because I was still holding on to the hope that it could get better. The hope that it could change. The hope that, as a miracle would happen, come down and really change this time in my life. But I had to accept it. And so many of us, we don't accept things because we're either trying to change it, we're either trying to revive it. And listen, as we talk today, I don't want you to be like, okay, Trent said this, so I'm going to make my decision. Relationships, certain things, you have to fight for it. Everything isn't going to be perfect. Friendships isn't going to be perfect. Your team isn't going to be perfect. And so just because it's not perfect doesn't mean you need to throw it away. Only you know if it's something that can be revived or fixed, because some of us, we're trying to give CPR to dead situations. I don't know if you heard that. Some of us are trying to give CPR to dead situations, and it's killing ourselves because we're trying to revive something that isn't meant to be revived. AKA, we're trying to fix something that's meant to stay broken. And so when it comes to acceptance, you got to accept that it's over. You got to accept that it's done. And when I accept that football was done, when I accept past relationships were done, even though I didn't want to accept it, but when I really said, okay, it's done, that gave me the space to move forward. It's like burning a bridge. We talk about that in the rehab process. With release, it was like burning the bridge. And so, okay, the bridge is burned, so I can't turn back and go back now. I have to figure it out. I have to move forward with my life. So acceptance is key. And even with closure, some of us, we never move forward because we're waiting on an apology that might not never come. We're waiting on changed behavior that might not never come. We're waiting on a situation that changed that might not never come. And we're waiting on understandings for the reason. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you're waiting on, okay, this is why it happened. So, okay, I can move on from it. And yeah, at times that could happen. But the reality of it is 98% of the times, you don't get the closure that you're looking for. You don't get the understanding for their reasons. You don't get the understanding for why it happened. You don't. But you know what has that understanding? Your future. You know, I didn't understand why certain relationships ended until I got in my marriage. Now it made sense. I didn't understand why certain dreams had to come to an end, why I had to move on from some things until I started living my purpose, aka rehab time. I didn't understand, you know, why certain friendships, why I had to lose certain jobs, why those things had to end until I met better people in my life. And so your future has your closure. You got to architect your closure. You got to create your closure. And the way I create it is just by saying these simple words. My future has the better that I deserve. And I know I will never be able to connect the dots moving forward, but I can connect the dots moving backwards. I know where I can't stay anymore, so I'm going to move on from that situation. Okay, so number 2 is acceptance. Number 3, as I said in my podcast, I said affiliation, which is the same thing, but I meant to say association. And as we work through this, we'll talk about this more in depth, but it's hard to break free from something that you know you need to break free from when you have the wrong association with that situation. What do I mean by that? Remember when I just talked about a few minutes ago where some of us, we like, oh, this brought this to my life. This saved me from this. And this was great at first. And this years ago was the thing that I needed. And we're still associating that thing, that situation, that person, whatever it is for you, we're still associating it with good. We're still associating it with pleasure. And when we have misassociations, we tend to break our own hearts. We tend to stay stuck in things because we're thinking that it is something when it's not something. So you got to change the association. You got to say, okay, it's not pleasure anymore, it's pain.